Section 102 of In the Nursery of My Bookhouse. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jeannie Hall. In the Nursery of My Bookhouse, edited by Olive Beaupre Miller. A Letter from a Cat by Helen Hunt Jackson. I do not feel wholly sure that my pussy wrote these letters herself. They always came inside the letters written to me by my mamma or other friends, and I never caught pussy writing at any time when I was at home. But the printing was pretty bad, and they were signed by pussy's name, and my mamma always looked very mysterious when I asked about them, as if there were some very great secret about it all, so that until I grew to be a big girl, I never doubted but that pussy printed them all alone by herself after dark. They were written when I was a very little girl, and was away from home with my father on a journey. We made this journey in our own carriage, and it was one of the pleasantest things that ever happened to me. My clothes and my father's were packed in a little leather valise, which was hung by straps underneath the carriage, and went swinging back and forth as the wheels went round. My father and I used to walk up all the steep hills, because old Charlie, our horse, was not very strong, and I kept my eyes on that valise all the while I was walking behind the carriage. It seemed to me the most unsafe way to carry a valise, and I wished very much that my best dress had been put in a bundle that I could carry in my lap. This was the only drawback to the pleasure of my journey, my fear that the valise would fall off when we did not know it, and be left in the road, and then I should not have anything nice to wear when I reached my aunt's house. But the valise went through all safe, and I had the satisfaction of wearing my best dress every afternoon while I stayed, and I was foolish enough to think a great deal of this. On the 4th day after our arrival came a letter from my mamma, giving me a great many directions how to behave, and enclosing this first letter from pussy. I carried both letters in my apron pocket all the time. They were the first letters ever I had received, and I was very proud of them. I showed them to everybody, and everybody laughed hard at pussy's, and asked me if I believed that pussy printed it herself. I thought perhaps my mamma held her paw, with the pen in it, as she had sometimes held my hand for me, and guided my pen to write a few words. I asked Papa to please ask Mamma in his letter if that were the way pussy did it, but when his next letter from Mamma came, he read me this sentence out of it: "Tell Helen I did not hold pussy's paw to write that letter." So then I felt sure pussy did it herself, and as I told you, I had grown up to be quite a big girl before I began to doubt it. You see, I thought my pussy such a wonderful pussy that nothing was too remarkable for her to do. I knew very well that cats generally did not know how to read or write, but I thought there had never been such a cat in the world as this pussy of mine. She was a little kitten when I first had her, but she grew fast, and was very soon bigger than I wanted her to be. I wanted her to stay little. Her fur was a beautiful dark gray color, and there were black stripes on her side, like the stripes on a tiger. Her eyes were very big, and her ears unusually long and pointed. This made her look like a fox, and she was so bright and mischievous that some people thought she must be part fox. She used to do one thing that I never heard of any other cats doing. She used to play hide and seek. And the most wonderful part of it was that she took it up of her own accord. As soon as she heard me shut the gate in the yard at noon, when school was done, she would run up the stairs as hard as she could go, and take her place at the top, where she could just peep through the banisters. When I opened the door, she would give a funny little mew, something like the mew cats make when they call their kittens. Then as soon as I stepped on the first stair to come up to her, she would race away at the top of her speed and hide under a bed. And when I reached the room, there would be no pussy to be seen. If I called her, she would come out from under the bed, but if I left the room and went downstairs without speaking, in less than a minute she would fly back to her post at the head of the stairs and call again with a peculiar mew. As soon as I appeared, off she would run and hide under the bed as before. Sometimes she would do this 3 or 4 times. It was odd, though. She never would do it twice, when other people were watching. When I called her, and she came out from under the bed, if there were strangers looking on, she would walk straight to me in the demurest manner, as if it were a pure accident that she happened to be under that bed, and no matter what I did or said, her frolic was over for that day. She used to follow me just like a little dog wherever I went. She followed me to school every day, and we had great difficulty on Sundays to keep her from following us to church. Here is Kitty's first letter. My dear Helen, that is what your mother calls you, I know, for I jumped up on her writing table just now, and looked while she was out of the room, and I am sure I have as much right to call you so as she has, for if you were my own little Kitty and looked just like me, I could not love you any more than I do. How many good naps I have had in your lap, and how many nice bits of meat you have saved for me out of your own dinner. Oh, I'll never let a rat or a mouse touch anything of yours so long as I live. I felt very unhappy after you drove off yesterday, and did not know what to do with myself. I went into the barn and thought I would take a nap on the hay. But it seemed so lonely without old Charlie stamping in his stall that I could not bear it, so I went into the garden and lay down under the damask rose bush. Now that your dear mother has taught me to print, I shall be able to say a great many things to you which I have often been unhappy about because I could not make you understand. I am entirely discouraged about learning to speak the English language, and I do not think anybody takes much trouble to learn ours, so we cats are confined entirely to the society of each other, which prevents our knowing so much as we might. When you are at home, I do not mind it, for although I cannot talk to you, I understand every word that you say to me, and we have such good plays together with the red ball. That is put away now in the bottom drawer of the little workstand in the sitting room. When your mother put it in, she turned round to me and said, "Poor pussy, no more good plays for you till Helen comes home." And I thought I should certainly cry. But I think it is very foolish to cry over what cannot be helped. So I pretended to have got something into my left eye, and rubbed it with my paw. It is very seldom that I cry over anything, unless it is spilt milk. I must confess I have often cried when that has happened, and it always is happening to cat's milk. They put it into old broken things that tip over at the least knock, and then they set them just where they are sure to be most in the way. Many's the time Josiah has knocked over that blue saucer of mine in the shed, and when you have thought that I had a nice breakfast of milk, I had nothing in the world but flies, which are not good for much more than just a little sort of relish. I am so glad of a chance to tell you about this, because I know when you come home you will get a better dish for me. I hope you found the horse chestnuts which I put in the bottom of the carriage for you. I could not think of anything else to put in, which would remind you of me, but I am afraid you will never think that it was I who put them there, and it will be too bad if you don't, for I had a dreadful time climbing up over the dasher with them. There are 3 beautiful dandelions out on the terrace, but I don't suppose they will keep till you come home. A man has been doing something to your garden, but though I watched him very closely all the time, I could not make out what he was about. I am afraid it is something you will not like, but if I find out more about it, I will tell you in my next letter. Goodbye, your affectionate Pussy. End of section 102. Recording by Jeannie Hall, Eldersburg, Maryland.